If you play fantasy football, this video will help you because we're going to break down all of the key takeaways that just happened, literally just happened in week 10. And more importantly, we're going to push it forward as to why these key takeaways matter not only for week 11 next week, but the rest of the fantasy season. And we have to start with the situation that just unfolded in New England that basically every single person who follows fantasy football, who makes content in this space, they've been waiting for this week right now. They've been waiting to say that TreVeyon Henderson has officially broken out. This past week, Rhamondre Stevenson was out with a toe injury yet again. Didn't practice all week, so it doesn't even look good for his chances of returning next week. And what just happened? Oh boy, TreVeyon Henderson finally broke out. The second-round rookie running back out of Ohio State, a very dynamic player. We got to see that explosiveness finally. Like if you were watching Ohio State last year during their national championship victory, during the regular season at all in college football, left and right you saw TreVeyon Henderson breaking off 20, 50 plus yard plays. And this past week we saw that again because you basically have to do that when you're taking 14 carries for 147 yards, multiple touchdowns, averaging over 10 yards per carry, having multiple 50-plus yard rushing touchdowns in this game. I mean, Rhamondre Stevenson at times this year has been good. He's been helpful for the Patriots. Obviously, a bunch of fumbles as well, but he was never ripping off 50-plus yard plays. It's just a totally different aspect that you get from TreVeyon Henderson, and at the risk of being demonetized for showing this entire clip, I'll basically just let you already see it. Right up the gut, he takes the speed. He doesn't even get touched, I don't think, and he just takes it to the house. Long speed is on there. You can see the other play where he basically ends the game. He's asking his coaches down the left sideline, like, hey, should I slide? Should I slide? He's looking at his coaches and they say, nah, just go in. Just go all the way in. He broke the tackle. That play was very impressive if you didn't see the whole entire play. But basically, you're not getting those plays from Rhamondre Stevenson. You're not getting them from Terrell Jennings, who left this game with an injury. Nobody else on the Patriots, probably entire roster, anybody on the team can make these 50-plus yard plays as frequent as TreVeyon Henderson. In this game, he ended up just commanding the backfield. Now, I will say, he played 51 of 61 possible snaps. Obviously, absolutely elite usage is what you're getting right there on his way to 28 fantasy points. But Terrell Jennings did leave this game with an injury, and then third string back for this game, D'Ernest Johnson, only ends up playing 6 snaps total. So obviously, this was a breakout game. It was partially a breakout game because there was nobody else left, but he absolutely seized the opportunity. Unlike earlier this year where he had more opportunities to see some touches, and then he ended up getting a fumble and benched for the rest of the game, this time wasn't the case. He took 2 of his 14 carries for 50-plus yards and multiple scores. And honestly, this second half of the season breakout could be very similar to what we saw out of Jahmyr Gibbs a couple of seasons ago, where he had a second half of the season breakout where it took a David Montgomery injury that year for Jahmyr Gibbs to get more usage, more red zone work, more carries in general. Now we're getting a Rhamondre Stevenson injury, and slowly we're seeing more of that usage for TreVeyon Henderson. Very similar things happening here. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Henderson getting these 14 to 15 to maybe 16 carry workloads as well. Some small target share opportunities can come in there. That's not going to be as prevalent. This is a guy who can definitely catch passes, but when you have a mobile quarterback like Drake May, you're probably not going to get these 5, 6, 7 check down opportunity games like we're seeing for Christian McCaffrey, like we're seeing for Jahmyr Gibbs. But don't be shocked if this is the next breakout rookie running back that people are taking in the second rounds of their fantasy drafts or third rounds at worst next year, because this is a guy who, as a 18-year-old college freshman, had 1,200 rushing yards at Ohio State, or a 19-year-old college true freshman, 19 touchdowns. This past year to end college was averaging 7 yards per carry, 1,000 rushing yards despite Quinshon Judkins also being there. He was the only player in college football to have 1,000 rushing yards, to have over 200 receiving yards, and to average 7 yards per carry. It's a special player. That's why he won in the second round. That's why even though multiple teams were calling up for the Patriots second round pick to try and get TreVeyon Henderson, the Bears being one of them, they said, nah, we're going to stick here and pick this dude. So Henderson is one key takeaway. Let's move over to this next backfield, because there's a lot of backfield situations just in general for fantasy. Running backs are obviously so important, especially this late in the season if you can find a new one. This situation we have to look at is DeAndre Swift returning to the Bears backfield. Now, obviously last week DeAndre Swift missed, and what happened? The rookie 7th round pick, Kyle Monangai, 176 rushing yards. He ended up totaling 198 yards in this game when he added in 3 receptions. And very quickly, the rumors started circulating. DeAndre Swift, how long is he going to be out? Then a personal matter popped up middle of the week heading into week 10. And now it's just all of a sudden, is this the Kyle Monangai show? Can you put that genie back in the bottle? Well, apparently you can, because DeAndre Swift came out at least for in week 10 and regained the backfield immediately. 13 carries, 80 yards, continued to be insanely efficient with 6.2 yards per carry. Kyle Monangai just 7 carries, 28 yards, 4 yards per carry. And when you look at the breakdown here, Swift coming back from a groin injury immediately plays 42 of 68 snaps according to PFF, Pro Football Focus. Kyle Monangai designated to just 26 snaps in this game, so he goes back to being basically a backup running back. And DeAndre Swift, look, you really can't blame Ben Johnson and the Chicago Bears for giving DeAndre Swift the job back and just basically letting him be the guy, because every time he's had the opportunity, especially the past month or 4 games, he's looked amazing. I mean, let's just take a look here. He's earning 70% of the opportunity so far this season with the Bears, right? And now if you look at it over this game, now heading into this game, by the way, it's not yet listed here in the player profiler game logs because I'm recording this on Sunday night right after the game's ended. So heading into this game, his last 4 contests, 16 fantasy points, top 20 running back, then 175 total yards and a touchdown, 138 total yards and a touchdown, 71 total yards and a touchdown. He's been a top 20 running back in fantasy in 4 straight weeks with a touchdown in all those games. And oh yeah, by the way, once again this week he was a top 20 fantasy running back. It's hard to say anything about a guy who entered this week 6th in the NFL, averaging 5.6 yards per touch, and that only went up this week when he averaged over 6 yards per carry. So yes, Kyle Monangai was awesome. Kyle Monangai should continue to be rostered in all 12-team formats. In most weeks when the Chicago Bears can play with a commanding lead, you're probably going to see this team want to lean on the run more. This week they were trailing by a lot, had to have a come from behind amazing victory for them. But most weeks you're probably going to see double-digit carries for both of these running backs. The next situation I want to talk about, let's stick with the running backs here, and I want to talk about Aaron Jones because quietly he's taken full control of this Minnesota backfield despite dealing with multiple injuries. He entered this week dealing with a shoulder injury. He kind of seemed like a true questionable tag. He ends up playing through it. He sees 9 carries for 47 yards and a touchdown, averages over 5 yards per touch, compared to just 4 carries for Jordan Mason, who was barely on the field in this game. Now you see 9 carries and you're like, that's not all that impressive, but then you have to keep in mind the Minnesota Vikings in this game were basically playing from behind by multiple scores against the Baltimore Ravens for really the entire second half. It was close in the first half. Ravens couldn't get touchdowns in the red zone. They were settling for field goals left and right. Eventually in the second half, they kind of broke through, scoring 18 points compared to just 9 for the Minnesota Vikings. You'll also factor in that Aaron Jones in this game, since they played from behind, was able to earn 6 targets, top 5 amongst running backs on the week so far, caught 3 of them for 22 yards. So even in this game, like where the rushing attack wasn't able to get going because they played from behind, Jones still saw about 70 total yards and a touchdown, 3 receptions, very respectable day. But it gets even better when you look at what was happening below the hood in this game. Now maybe part of it is because it was passing down situations and Jordan Mason isn't known as a pass catcher, but Aaron Jones, 46 snaps out of 65, just 16 snaps for Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones runs 32 routes compared to just 9 for Jordan Mason. Aaron Jones now has basically been the workhorse running back whenever he's been on the field. They've played 3 fully healthy games together this season. Aaron Jones got hurt obviously in week 2. He's only been fully back and healthy like these last 2 to 3 weeks or so, left again last week with a shoulder injury. But in those 3 games, Jones is averaging 12.6 fantasy points per game compared to just 5.3 fantasy points per game for Jordan Mason. That basically makes Aaron Jones a top 24 running back, borderline top 20, and Jordan Mason obviously like a bench play. Now this shouldn't be too shocking because literally just last year, Aaron Jones had like one of the quietest 1,500 yard seasons. Yes, he had over 1,100 rushing yards last year. He had over 400 receiving yards, nearly 15 or over 1,500 yards last season and 7 touchdowns. Like one of the quietest, most impressive years of 1,500 yards and 7 touchdowns that you'll find, over 14 fantasy points per game last year. Obviously a totally different situation with Sam Darnold gone now and Jordan Mason there. But when Aaron Jones is healthy, and that is a big if, he's already been hurt multiple times this year, but when he's healthy, he's the RB1 in Minnesota. And the upcoming schedule isn't bad. He's going to be at home against the Bears, which every single team goes off against basically. Then some tougher matchups, although the Vikings or the Packers defense has been hit or miss. Matchups against the Commanders though, the Giants, the Cowboys. Heading into the fantasy postseason, you're going to be facing the Cowboys and the Giants. This is the type of guy that you want to buy low on before your trade deadline starts. Yeah, just a spoiler alert, he might be in a future video this week. Now before we get into the next player in this video, I've got something great to share with you. I've teamed up with DraftKings Pick 6, the official daily fantasy sports partner of the NFL, where you can turn your game day reads into real payouts fast. All right, now here's how it works. All you do is pick more or less on 2 or more player stats, from breakout rookies to elite quarterbacks, and watch every snap get way more interesting. The better your calls, the better your payouts. It's basically that simple. There's no convoluted rules. Just pick 2 or more player stats, the more or less on them, and watch your players perform. And now here's the best part for you. Right now, new DraftKings customers that play $5 or more get $50 in Pick 6 credits. So trust your instincts and download the DraftKings Pick 6 app now using code SAL to get in on the action. In partnership with DraftKings Pick 6, the crown is yours. All right, next up, let's go back to the Patriots. We already talked about Ramondre Stevenson and his toe and how that impacted TreVeyon Henderson's breakout, but let's talk about wide receiver Kayshon Boutte and his hamstring. Now, Kayshon Boutte isn't like an elite wide receiver by any means, but he was a wide receiver for the Patriots who was scoring plenty of touchdowns, making plenty of plays, and more importantly, running all the routes, playing all the snaps for the team this year. He was out with a hamstring. What did that mean for the rest of the wide receivers? The rest of the wide receivers, meaning, Stefon Diggs was a starter either way, but there was hype about the third-round rookie Kyle Williams out of Washington State, what his role would be. What would it look like for Demario Douglas without Kayshon Boutte, right? What would it look like for maybe even Mack Hollins or Efton Chisholm? So let's look at it. What did it break out to be? Mack Hollins ended up being the guy who popped off. 106 receiving yards, 6 catches in this game, led the team as well with a very impressive 10 targets in this game. Stefon Diggs was second with 8. And the rookie Kyle Williams, he did have a play. It was just one play, just one catch for 72-yard touchdown, but he did make an impact. He was out there more. He was running more of the routes. If we look at the breakdown right now, who led the team? Mack Hollins, 48 snaps, 30 routes run. Then Stefon Diggs, as you would probably expect, second on the team. Third on the team, though, Kyle Williams with 34 snaps, 21 routes run. It only led to 2 targets, but when Drake May is out there and he's going to be throwing downfield often, as we've seen this year, he found Kyle Williams for one of those for a 70-plus yard play. So Kyle Williams starts to become like this deeper league stash, especially if he's going to be on the field more, getting more chemistry with Drake May if Kayshon Boutte's hamstring, which typically they do take a couple of weeks to come back from if he's forced to miss another game or two. Now, if you're not familiar with Kyle Williams, we broke him down all throughout April and May for fantasy football, and like during the draft process as like a sleeper type of a pick, and they took him in the 3rd round, and that obviously helped for in terms of draft capital for fantasy football and real life getting on the field. Now he's finally getting on the field due to an injury. 1,200 yards, 17.1 yards per catch, and a 26% target share last year at Washington State. When you look at the profile of just what type of player he is as well, very athletic. He went to the NFL Combine, ran a 4.4 40 time, which is very strong for his size as well. So he kind of has like all the boxes in terms of 3rd round capital is good. Now he's with a good quarterback, getting the opportunities for a player who produced and has athleticism. We'll see what happens here. He still has to compete with Hunter Henry, Stefon Diggs, and even now Mack Hollins for targets, Demario Douglas as well. So it's not a perfect situation, but deeper leagues worth a stash. And in terms of like the immediate player to pick up here, obviously Stefon Diggs is not available in any leagues. He's the biggest winner with Kayshon Boutte out in this offense just rolling. But I would say like the short-term fill-in, if Kayshon Boutte was to miss again, Mack Hollins with multiple teams on bye next week, by the way, right? You're going to lose next week all of your Colts wide receivers who have all been very good. Alec Pierce off waivers, Michael Pittman this year, Josh Downs. You're going to lose Chris Olave and the Saints. So this could be a situation where maybe you need a fill-in, a guy who just saw 10 targets attached to Drake May. If Kayshon Boutte's out again, Mack Hollins is in a terrible act. Now I want to talk about what's going on here with the Saints and Alvin Kamara because, look, Alvin Kamara finally looked like himself again this past week. He has not looked like himself at all. This past week, though, and let me just set kind of the table here. Last week, Alvin Kamara scored less than 1 fantasy point. The last 3 weeks combined, Alvin Kamara has not even scored 12 fantasy points combined over the past month, 3 weeks of the season. He came into this game, though, 22 carries, 83 yards. Now, he wasn't efficient in terms of per carry basis, 3.8 yards per carry, but multiple explosive plays. I'm talking 15-plus yard plays in the passing game and as a rusher. And the passing game is important because 3 catches for 32 yards. He has not been involved all that much as a receiver. We saw a 24-yard reception in this game, or 20, was it 24 yards? 26-yard reception, in this game right there. So Kamara looked a lot better in this one. 25 carries, clear workhorse with Kendre Miller done for the season, with Devin Neal out of Kansas, the rookie, like not really somebody that this team trusts just yet. 25 touches, about 115 total yards, nearly 5 yards per touch. Kamara finally looked like him old self. That's important. When you look at the usage, he ends up playing 43 of a possible 68 snaps, 24 snaps for Devin Neal, who did play a decent amount of snaps in this game. Like he's going out there and he's playing about 30 to 35% of the snaps, but all the backfield touches, as you can see and how we already talked about, went to Kamara all the way on the far right here. You can see I'll put these in red boxes. 22 carries for Kamara, just 4 for Devin Neal. When you break it down, though, we still have to keep this in mind. The Saints entering this week were the second fewest in points per game this year, not getting to the red zone often. Although this past week, Tyler Shough, now that he's had a couple starts under his belt, he started to look a little bit better, albeit against the Panthers defense that has been hot and cold so far this year. Shough had by far his best game on the season, no doubt about it. He's looked terrible up until this game. It did lead to a couple of blown coverages, J.C. Horn falling on a 60-yard touchdown to Chris Olave, but still Shough was able to make the throw. Now, at the end of the day, there's really no competition for Alvin Kamara. It just comes down to like late in the season, are they going to continue to give Kamara 25 touches per game like if their season's over? I mean, at the end of the day, we don't even know if Kamara is going to be playing next year football, right? This is a 30-year-old running back. Who knows? He probably will be, but like it's not like they need to preserve him all that much. This is not a team that is contending anytime soon. They'll probably be drafting another quarterback this upcoming season if I had to bet. bet. And when you look at the upcoming schedule, at home against the Falcons, like in terms of a game where they might play from behind, sure, but the Falcons defense has been banged up and you can run on them lately. Then a matchup against the Dolphins, that's great. Matchup against the Panthers where he just had a good game against, and then matchups against the Jets and the Titans entering the fantasy postseason. Those are both solid or solid matchups that you can run on. But more importantly, like all these matchups upcoming, when you look at it, matchups against the Saints or against the Dolphins, Panthers, Titans, and Jets as you head into the fantasy postseason, those games should all remain close, and that's important. This past week's game, a game in which they won the Saints against the Panthers, remained close, and it allowed Kamara to see 22 carries, 25 touches. That's important. I think Kamara is somebody that you should actually be trading for right now in fantasy because of that favorable playoff schedule. Now, you're probably not going to be able to trade for this guy because you're going to have to pay a pretty price because he is already easily one of the best waiver wire ads of the entire season. Like Rico Dowdle's up there for sure, but Jackson Dart has to be a top waiver wire ad on the season right now because all this guy continues to do is produce. This past week, 242 yards passing, 8 yards per attempt is great. Ads on the ground, 66 rushing yards and multiple touchdowns. This was basically in 3 quarters of play because he left this game with a concussion, ends up getting concussed as he's running in this game. And this is kind of the knock on Jackson Dart is that he takes way too many hits. He ends up fumbling the ball, getting it back, takes a concussion though, gets ruled out of that game, does not come back in, which is unfortunate. But now this is a guy that when he's been out there and starting, basically from this point on, right here when he took over in week 4, he is the number 2 quarterbacks in fantasy points per game, averaging 23 fantasy points per week. Again, that takes into account the fact that he left this past week as well. During that stretch, you're getting the most rushing touchdowns out of any quarterback. You're getting finishes of QB3, QB10 last week. This past week, he was once again a top 10 quarterback. He's now averaging over 45 rushing yards per game. He now has 7 rushing touchdowns, and he did not become a starter until week 4, which is just crazy. He looks like the real deal. The question just becomes like, it was a pretty bad concussion. He got ruled out. Will he play next week against the Packers? That's now up in the air. But when you look at what you're going to get out of the fantasy playoffs, going into the fantasy playoffs, a Commanders team that on offense and defense is banged up, a matchup against the Raiders bottom 10 secondary, a matchup against the Vikings that basically every single week it looks like that this is either one of the better defenses or worse defenses, and lately it hasn't looked all that great. So I would say Jackson Dart, I mean, against any opponent right now, he's been so good because of what he can do with his legs. Assuming he's healthy and he's out there, he's going to be a top 10 quarterback every week. All right, the next situation I want to talk about here is the guys who were just traded based on the trade deadline this past week and check in on what they did in their first week with their new teams. One of those guys was obviously Jakobi Meyers. He was traded to the Jaguars in exchange for a 4th and a 6th round pick due to the injuries to Travis Hunter and Brian Thomas. And then also one of those trades was the Saints sending Rashid Shaheed to a very good Seahawks team. Goes from a bad team to a good team for Rashid Shaheed. Gets reunited with his former offensive coordinator last year with the Saints, include Clint Kubiak. Let's start. Let's see what these guys have. We obviously have to look at this with a grain of salt. They were both traded on Tuesday. Probably didn't get their team's playbook into the facilities until Wednesday, so it's not like they're going to have a full week to learn the playbook, and even that's not enough. But even despite that, Jakobi Meyers came out, and it wasn't that hard, but he did lead the Jaguars in receiving with 41 receiving yards, which is just pretty sad, the fact that he only had 3 catches for 41 yards. In this game, Jakobi Meyers only played 27 snaps. He did not mostly operate as a slot wide receiver, but he did play some of the slot. Only 3 targets in this game, 16 routes run. I would assume moving forward that he's going to play more than Tim Patrick. The fact that they spent 2 draft picks to acquire Jakobi Meyers, once he gets another week of the playbook and just reps and practice, I would assume that you start to see these roles switch here, where Tim Patrick's role becomes the wide receiver 3. And Jakobi Meyers goes from playing 27 snaps to 44 snaps, assuming Brian Thomas continues to miss with injury, assuming Travis Hunter does not return. He's going to have to miss at least a couple more weeks on IR. Now, if we look at what happened with Rashid Shaheed, a little bit of a different story here. Rashid Shaheed just 1 catch for 3 yards, had 2 carries for 20 yards in this game, was also returning some punts at times. Now, you have to keep in mind, in terms of Rashid Shaheed, he basically didn't play in this game. He only ran 8 total routes. This was an opportunity or this was a situation where it was pretty clear as day that he just did not know the playbook, or they did not feel that he was as comfortable out there. And probably the bigger reason why he didn't play was like they just blew out the Arizona Cardinals. Like 44-22 makes this game look way closer than it was. Like it was 35-0 at one point. It was 38-7 at halftime. So when you're up by like 4 or 5 scores and you have a new guy on the offense, it's probably pretty easy to be like, hey, just take a seat. You had your couple of carries, you returned the punt. Like we're for the most part benching starters in general here, and you don't even know the playbook. So let's just bench you. You'll give you another week and we'll get this thing going next week. So I truly think that's what happened. But the whole point here is that he was traded to this team because Sam Darnold, one, this offense is great, and Sam Darnold is just launching moon balls so far this year. Sam Darnold is throwing the ball deep 4 times per game, but more importantly, he's number 2 right now in air yards per attempt. So downfield in terms of just his air yards per attempt right now. He's a top 5 quarterback right now in expected points added. That's your overall quarterback efficiency. And in terms of throwing the ball downfield, his explosiveness rating, #1 explosive play rating in the NFL. He's the #1 quarterback downfield passing right now through 10 weeks. Obviously, JSN has had a lot of success with that. We've seen Torrey Horton, the rookie, have a lot of success, and Rashid Shaheed should only get even more success than he's already had in his career so far now that he's attached to what looks like one of the better offenses in the NFL. All right, now before we get into the next backfield situation that you need to know about, a key takeaway from week 10, I just want to remind you for free right now, you can check it out with the link in the description below. You can get my #1 waiver wire target at every single position for this week, or you can just type into your phone, tablet device, waiverwins.com. That is waiverwins.com. And that takes you to this page right here where you just simply enter your email. I've been doing this so many times now. I'm getting so many emails from myself. You enter your email to take you to this page just to what to expect next steps wise. Pretty much it sums up to, you can watch that video. There's a little bit more secrets in there and some other stuff you can get, but only for you beautiful people who are going to go through and do this over on waiverwins.com. But pretty much just check your email next couple of minutes, 3 to 5 minutes. If you don't see it in your primary email, be sure to check your spam and promotional folders. That'll be the #1 waiver wire target, not only for this week at every single position, but the rest of the season, heading into the fantasy postseason, the championship, everything you need to help you win your matchups and dominate the waiver wire. All right, next up, let's talk about this backfield situation in Jacksonville. We were just talking about Jakobi Meyers in Jacksonville. Now I want to talk about Travis Etienne because, man, oh man, he just continues to be the guy in Jacksonville. They came out of their bye week last week. Isn't going to be the rookie bye shout to, and is this the week he takes over the post-bye rookie bump? Nope, Travis Etienne held him off. And that continued this past week where Etienne saw 16 carries for 58 yards on the ground. He had a rushing touchdown as well compared to just 4 carries for Baishal Tutin in this game. Etienne as a pass catcher, 2 catches, 19 yards, just continues to be the commanding force in this backfield. He ended up having 77 total yards and a touchdown in this game. He scored about 15 fantasy points. He once again was very fantasy relevant. He once again was the only piece of this backfield worth having in fantasy roster. When we look at the PFF usage snaps here, 35 snaps for Travis Etienne. LaQuint Allen, the rookie LaQuint Allen, actually played more snaps, 20 compared to just 17 for Baishal Tutin, due to some 2-minute offense, due to later in the game them playing from behind and blowing the lead. But the story was Travis Etienne just continues to be the guy to roster in this backfield. Baishal Tutin, if you want to handcuff him in your 12-team format, sure. Even then, depending on like if you're in a bye week situation, if you need to pick up a wide receiver or something like that and drop Baishal Tutin, I think that's completely fine as well at this point, because it's pretty clear, at least in my mind right now, that even in a tough matchup, like he faced the Houston Texans, arguably one of the best defenses, if not the best, against running backs this year, you still got a good performance of 15 fantasy points, 77 total yards, and a touchdown from Travis Etienne. That's what you want out of your running backs. Your workhorse running backs in tough matchups still come through for you one way or another. And it's been a very difficult schedule like the past month to month and a half of the season, but moving forward, it should get a little bit easier. You're going to get matchups against a banged up Chargers defense, and then good matchups against the Cardinals, the Titans, the Jets, and the Colts, especially when you're in the fantasy postseason. Matchups against the Jets and the Titans are going to be very beneficial. Travis Etienne is somebody that personally I think is worth rostering in all leagues. Not even rostering, obviously, but starting in all leagues and not being worried about. Let's go to the next backfield situation. I wanted to check in on what was happening in the Giants backfield between Tyron Tracy and Devin Singletary, because last week in week 9, it was kind of weird that Devin Singletary took over the backfield. If you actually were watching the games, it was kind of underreported that in the third quarter, Tyron Tracy dealt with a little bit of an injury. Before that, he was commanding the backfield. After that, we didn't really see much of it. But he was able to suit up this past week, and he took back over the backfield, as probably you would expect if you were paying attention last week. 14 carries, 71 yards, over 5 yards per carry. Just 8 carries for Devin Singletary, 20 yards. Now, I will say, Devin Singletary still in this game, although Tracy played 49 snaps compared to just 24 for Singletary. Although Tracy saw 14 carries compared to just 8 for Devin Singletary. Singletary in this game, he still saw 11 opportunities. Like, for whatever reason, Brian Daboll, the head coach of the Giants, they go way back, Devin Singletary and Brian Daboll, during their times in Buffalo together, 5, 6 years ago, whatever it is at this point, and he just loves Devin Singletary. He trusts him a lot, and he's a trusted veteran. Like, he's kind of deserved it. So although Tracy is the guy that you want to be starting in fantasy moving forward, depending on the matchup and what your bye week situations look like, Singletary in 12-team format should still be rostered at this point, because it looks like he's going to probably get 8 to 12 opportunities a game, and is the next man up if something happens to Tyron Tracy, which, as we've seen so far in his career, he's pretty much banged up like every single week on the injury report with one thing or another. Moving forward for these Giants running backs, it's going to be a pretty shitty situation against the Packers next week, especially if Jackson Dart misses. Like, maybe Tracy can just get you there with some receptions. Pretty situation, same thing against the Lions. But once you start to get into the fantasy postseason, matchups against the Commanders and Raiders is where maybe you can actually get some usage out of a Tyron Tracy or maybe a Singletary if he was to take back over this backfield. Speaking of taking over a backfield, that didn't necessarily happen this past week, but very quietly, Blake Corum made it a split backfield in LA with the Rams in Kyren Williams. We saw a little bit of this happening last week. Now, 13 carries for Blake Corum, 25 for Kyren. Kyren goes for 114 yards, right? Kyren scoring touchdowns. So he still looks like the clear back last week. At the end of the day, last week, Blake Corum only played 27% of the snaps, but quietly was seeing more drives. He got 13 carries in key situations, right? Heading into this week, it got even better for Blake Corum. Because according to the PFF snaps, as you can see right here, Blake Corum played in this game 26 out of 68 snaps. He played nearly 40% of the snaps, but more importantly, they were rotating drives. Kyren Williams started the game, next drive was Corum. Drive after that was Kyren Williams, next drive was Blake Corum. That is pretty much a committee if you're rotating drives equally. And that led to this past week, Blake Corum seeing 13 carries for the second straight week compared to just 14 for Kyren Williams in this game. The reason why this is important, I'm not going to declare Blake Corum is now the backfield and he's the RB1 in LA or it's automatically a split backfield. Obviously, Kyren Williams has goodwill. Sean McVay trusts him. Kyren Williams has been very productive for this team the last 2 to 3 years. But this is also one of the best offenses in football. So if you can get a guy who is now trending up in it, playing a lot more, getting 13 carries in back-to-back games and is a talented running back, he should be rostered in all 12 team formats. And more importantly, if Kyren Williams, who has basically dealt with like foot and ankle injuries almost every single year of his career in the NFL, if he was to go down and miss some time, Blake Corum becomes the RB1, a talented running back, 3rd round pick out of Michigan, where he was like the best running back in college football, a talented running back, now becoming the RB1. Whoops, there we go. Now becoming the RB1 in a Sean McVay offense that Matthew Stafford is like an MVP candidate. They look awesome. He would instantly be like a top 12 weekly RB. So Blake Corum now does become somebody that's on the radar. Like, this is a key takeaway. He should be rostered in probably most 10 team in all 12 team leagues right now. So that's one of the key takeaways. That's actually 10 total key takeaways we just talked about. I appreciate you all tuning into this video. Now, tomorrow, we're going to end up having the waivers. At every single position, the waivers that you should be adding. That video will pop up here right when it's ready. But until then, I appreciate you all tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, be sure to hit the subscribe button before you go. And I'll see you all in the next one.